Hey y'all, it's Victoria from the Expat Exchange, an online community for those curious or considering moving abroad. Welcome to my channel. This is my very first video, and I wanted to discuss why I moved abroad in the first place. So there's no long, dramatic, drawn-out reason why I wanted to move abroad, but I think that is an important starting point. So before I get into the details, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about myself. I grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C., but I was born in Brooklyn, New York. Shout out to Brooklyn. And I did all of my foundational education in Maryland. Middle school, high school, and then I went on and completed a bachelor's in social work at Bowie State University, which is a historically Black college. Shout out to all my fellow Bulldogs. About a year to a year and a half after I graduated. So about a year and a half after I graduated, there was an unfortunate death in my family, which forced me to uproot my life in the DMV. And I ended up relocating to Houston, where I had some extended family. I still have some extended family in Houston. And Houston is a super dope city. Shout out to H-Town. And while I was there, I completed 2 master's degrees. So the first degree was from Texas Southern University, where I earned a master's in public administration with a concentration in public policy. Texas Southern is also an HBCU like Bowie State. And then I earned my second master's from University of Houston, where I studied clinical social work. So about a year, maybe 9 months to a year before I graduated from the University of Houston, the relationship that I was in at the time was falling apart and ending. Nothing like, super dramatic. It essentially just wasn't working out. In the course of the relationship falling apart, I told my ex at the time, if this doesn't work out, I'm moving to London. I just love London. Before I moved here, I visited maybe 3 or 4 times. I have extended family in London, and I was fortunate enough to visit during the 2012 Olympic Games, and I attended a couple of sporting events like women's basketball, track and field. This is when Usain Bolt was like taking over the world. And I was fortunate enough to see him win, that 100-meter gold medal. But just the experiences that I've had whenever I traveled to London was amazing. And I just fell in love with the city more and more every time I traveled there. After, I knew this relationship I was in wasn't gonna work, I just wanted to do something for myself because I had completed all of the education that I wanted to pursue. I didn't have an interest then, and I don't have an interest now in, going for a doctorate and going through that whole PhD program. Shout out to any and everybody that's going through that. May the force be with you. But yeah, it's something that I'm definitely not interested in. So the relationship ending combined with my concluding my master's program, and I was at an amazing organization, and I'm still thankful to this day that I was able to be employed and work with so many amazing people. The management was very progressive, and it was my first job as a mental health practitioner. Even though I absolutely loved working there, the experience was invaluable. There was no room for growth. I literally, to this day, probably would just be in that same role, which would have been fine. I would have had a very comfortable life. I had a comfortable life when I lived in Houston, but I just knew that there was something more that I needed to achieve, that I can, strive for. And living a complacent life wasn't appealing. It's not appealing now, and it was not appealing then. And so I decided to take the risk to move abroad. I would have been more upset with myself if I did not take the opportunity to at least try, even if I moved to London, and then, you know, within 6 months to a year, I was like, no, this is not it. I'm gonna go back home. At least I tried. But fortunately for me, my experience living in the UK has been not all roses, and, you know, so not saying that, you know, every step of this journey of moving to London was perfect and ideal. Like, that is absolutely not the truth. There has been mistakes that I have made. There's difficulties that I've encountered. But when I look at the whole picture, I'm so happy that I chose to move here. I'm still here. It's 5 years later, almost 5 years later, I'm still in London. I don't regret it. I have no regrets. But I would have absolutely had regrets if I didn't at least try to move abroad. So yeah, that's my expat story. Essentially, I was at a crossroads where the relationship I was in at the time was ending. I had concluded my master's level education. I was in a fabulous job with no room for growth, and I just chose to take the risk. And fortunately for me, the risk thus far has worked out. So if you are a fellow expat, drop down in the comments and let us all know why you chose to move abroad. Or if you are considering moving abroad, let us know what city or country is on your list. Chat later. Thanks for stopping by.